Imagine that you work in a castle as the right hand of the most powerful demon in all of hell, Beelzebub. You're such a big fan, and when you meet her, you realize she's just a beautiful girl who loves sweets and soft things, so you end up falling in love with her. This is the story of Belzebu, a young woman flying among clouds. The sky is a soft blue. She is tranquil, smiling, heading to a candy house. The sky around her is a soft blue, almost as if the air itself is saturated with sweetness. The girl seems to be in a state of absolute tranquility, with a relaxed smile on her face as she heads towards what looks like a house made entirely of candy. The house, with its vibrant and eye-catching colors, is like a place straight out of a fairy tale. The walls look like gingerbread, the roof is covered in icing, and the details are so intricate that even the windows seem to be made of crystal candy. The garden of the house is decorated with lollipops and cotton candy trees that dance in the breeze. However, just before reaching the dream house, the young woman wakes up abruptly. The sparkle in her eyes fades, and her dreamy expression turns into one of surprise. We realize that it had all been a dream. We find ourselves in Pandemonium, a strange and fascinating realm where fallen angels have been relegated after Satan's departure. This place, which we might imagine as a dark and dangerous region, is now ruled by an unexpected figure, Belzebu, the young woman with blonde hair we saw in the dream. She, despite her title as the leader of this demonic realm, is not what one would expect from a figure of power. Her behavior doesn't fit the typical image of a fearsome ruler. On the contrary, Belzebu is a carefree person with a childlike character that often leads her into absurd situations. This is where Muling comes into the picture, her loyal assistant who is always on the brink of despair due to his boss's whimsical behavior. Muling, who takes his job very seriously, constantly finds himself dealing with the challenges of working with someone like Belzebu. In one of the first situations he has to face, he's worried because his boss doesn't seem ready for an important meeting with other members of the realm. When he decides to go into her room to wake her up, he finds her still curled up in her bed, just as God brought her into the world, well, as Satan brought her into the world, and playing with some adorable little creatures called gossamers. These soft and fluffy creatures have the potential to become a mint success as plush toys, but Belzebu seems more interested in their softness than any commercial value. Muling, as an assistant, has an emotional roller coaster in his interactions as Beelzebub. Sometimes he admires her ability to act competently when she puts her mind to it, but other times his frustration reaches peak levels due to her immature behavior. Many times, Muling seems more like a babysitter than an assistant, always looking after his whimsical queen, but despite everything, he can't help but feel a deep weakness for her and always ends up forgiving her, no matter how tough things get. If we put it that way, Muling would be a kind of tsundere. As a token of his appreciation for Belzebu and her love for soft things, Muling gives her a pajama made from alpaca wool, hoping that it will cover her up a bit more and that she'll stop sleeping as the devil brought her into the world. The pajamas immediately spark Belzebu's excitement, and she quickly wants to take everything off to try it on right then and there, not caring that they're in a hallway and not in the privacy of her room. To her, those little details don't matter at all. Later, Belzebu asks Muling to kneel in front of her. Our protagonist expects an honor. Instead, Belzebu pats his head. The next day, Muling sees Belzebu in bed with gossamers. However, instead of a grand ceremony, Belzebu simply gives him a gentle pat on the head, calling him a good boy, dissipating all the tension in the moment. The next day, when Muling goes to find Belzebu to take her to fulfill her responsibilities, he comes across a scene that deeply discourages him, as Belzebu is once again lying in bed with nothing on, surrounded by the gossamers. Frustrated, Muling can't help but feel that his efforts to make her more responsible are in vain, as he reads her the agenda for the day, and Belzebu barely pays attention, just wanting to go back to sleep. In the middle of their conversation, Muling, who is always trying to do his job as best as he can, reminds Belzebu that she should be doing more demonic things, like tempting humans and fighting angels. But Belzebu, in her relaxed tone, explains to him that that's not the true role of demons. According to her, both demons and angels are on the same team, as they both work to tempt humans and make them make decisions for themselves. Muling keeps insisting that they should check on the state of the kingdom, so they both head out to explore Pandemonium. But to Muling's surprise, this inferno is not what one would expect from a place ruled by demons. Instead of being a place full of chaos and darkness, Pandemonium looks like a peaceful Japanese village. This confuses Muling, who remembers that Belzebu was once known as a fearsome and relentless warrior, but that image is completely shattered when they see her in her current state, struggling not to be outdone even by the local animals. At one point, Belzebu wanders into the least safe part of her village, which causes Muling to panic. Worried for her safety, he desperately searches for her until he finds her being bothered by some troublesome guys. Without thinking twice, Muling confronts them and defeats them, making sure that Belzebu is safe. Back at the palace, Muling gifts her something for having worried so much about her, but his words are quickly nullified when Belzebu completely ignores him, lost in her own thoughts. What Muling doesn't know is that Belzebu is actually overwhelmed by the fact that he cares so much about her. Muling brings Belzebu some adorable profiteroles that have names like medicine, but they're actually fluffy French pastries. They're so cute that she can't bring herself to eat them because they remind her of her beloved gossamers. In the midst of her tenderness, what seemed like a brief break turns into a fluffy world full of gossamers, where Belzebu seems to get lost. Meanwhile, Muling, in his usual rush, ends up falling down the stairs. Just before hitting the ground, he is saved by Azazel, a demon who at first glance seems imposing and manly. However, something seems off about him as he only communicates through signs, almost like bling. Admiring Azazel's stoic attitude, he decides to follow him and try to learn from him to become more manly. However, every situation he finds himself in shows a completely different side of what he expected. When the manly demon tells him that he collects bears, Muling imagines that the imposing and masculine Azazel has real bears in his room, when in reality, Azazel is referring to his collection of stuffed bears and so on. When Azazel tells him that he likes something, the rookie demon imagines the manliest version of his words. But instead of a tough and rugged figure, Azazel turns out to be a lover of cute things. This is confirmed when Muling enters his room, which is filled with adorable dolls that he makes himself. Muling's surprise is evident. It's nothing like what he imagined. Azazel, with a mix of shyness and sincerity, explains that he's not very good at communicating and that his fierce appearance tends to scare others, even though he's actually a very sensitive person. So much so that if someone says something that hurts him, he might end up crying. The relationship between Azazel and Belzebu also comes to light when Azazel reveals that he makes dolls for her. The queen also reveals that the demon is a high-ranking fallen angel, as powerful and ancient as she is. Muling, in his attempt to win Azazel's approval, tells him that he also likes cute things. The demon, embarrassed, asks him if it bothers him that he likes cute things, but the protagonist replies that while he was a bit surprised, he doesn't find it weird at all, which results in a sudden hug from Cecil. However, Belzebu doesn't seem happy at all with this scene and quickly pulls him away, insisting several times that Muling is her assistant. Muling finds Belphegor trembling outside Belzebu's room. Belzebu throws her into the bathroom. Belphegor has social anxiety, needing the bathroom when nervous, especially with Muling. A worried Muling believes that something serious is happening to her, but Beelzebub intervenes in an unconventional way as he throws her into the bathroom. It turns out that Belphegor suffers from severe social anxiety, which gives her a constant urge to go to the bathroom whenever she's nervous, and that happens practically every time someone speaks to her, especially when it's Muling. The situation becomes even more tense when Azazel appears, which further escalates Belphegor's anxiety, causing her to run to the bathroom over and over again. Azazel, confused, thinks that Belphegor is still afraid of him because of his intimidating appearance and decides to try a makeover to look more friendly. However, the attempt to make him look cuter has the opposite effect, making him look even more terrifying. Belzebu and Muling suggest that he try to smile, but it turns out he can't even smile properly, as every time he tries he just ends up frowning. They suggest he think of happy things, like his adorable dolls coming to life, but even that doesn't manage to soften his expression. As Muling reflects on how he could be more popular with the girls, the conversation shifts to the topic of Valentine's Day gifts. Muling reveals that he only received cookies from his mom, which makes him a little sad. Azazel, feeling empathy for him, decides to give him his own cookies as a gesture of friendship. Muling thanks him for the gesture and leaves, but just after that, Belphegor, still nervous, asks if Azazel is mad at her. To calm her down, Mioli hands her the cookies he gave to Cecil, but instead of soothing her, it only increases her anxiety. However, the young demon gets excited upon receiving the cookies and vows never to eat them, as they are a gift from Azazel, and she leaves feeling happy. Throughout the encounter between Belphegor and Azazel, Muling starts to suspect that the reason behind Belphegor's constant anxiety might not just be about Edo, but something deeper related to her feelings for Azazel. The way Belphegor reacts to Azazel's presence seems to suggest that she feels something more than just friendship. Another day, Belzebu and Muling are at a cafe enjoying a quiet moment. The queen apologizes to her subordinate, fearing that he might think having lunch with her is a chore, but he replies that he's open to new experiences and is enjoying it, which makes her happy. However, insecurity overwhelms the protagonist, who isn't sure if he's worthy of sitting at the same table as his queen. Belzebu, with her usual sweetness, thinks about sharing her ice cream with Muling, but she starts overthinking the whole thing. The problem is that the cafe is known for everyone going there with their partner, and the idea that they might look like one makes her doubt. After all, sharing an ice cream could send the wrong message. So after overthinking it, she decides to cancel her offer, leaving Muling a bit disappointed. While they are there, a fallen angel appears and starts to attract the attention of the girls in the place. It's about Astaroth, a character who seems to have quite a bit of charisma. Upon seeing him, Belzebu shows that she's not very interested in his presence, but she ends up succumbing to his fluffy wings, which, by the way, are fake. Despite her disdain for him, those soft wings are her weakness, and this doesn't go unnoticed. Astaroth, curious about how Muling became Beelzebub's assistant, suspects that something strange must have happened. This leads him to remember the time when Beelzebub was an angel. During the war between heaven and hell, Astaroth aligned himself with Beelzebub, and as a consequence was sent to Pandemonium. This flashback shows us that Astaroth refers to Belzebu as sister, but it's pretty clear that he has a strong crush on her. Muling, not fully understanding the relationship between the two, comments that they make a nice couple, which greatly annoys the queen. Belzebu, in a moment of bad mood, decides to step away from the conversation, and Astaroth, worried, goes to look for her. She fears that she might have made Muling feel bad, especially after having a good time together, but Astaroth, playing the big brother role, tries to comfort her with a hug, which manages to calm her down a bit. However, she ends up reminding him that it's strange for him to call her sister since they aren't actually related, but he understood that as both being angels, they kind of were. Finally, Belzebu returns to her work, and Muling is there to greet her. The atmosphere is a bit tense, but the protagonist tells her that they could repeat the lunch outing another day, which lifts the queen's spirits and she returns to her tasks. However, her good mood doesn't last long when she sees a mountain of paperwork on her desk waiting to be reviewed. Astaroth, however, seems to have found a comfortable spot in Belzebu's office and has been spending a lot of time there lately. He watches Muling closely and feels happy to see that he comes across as simple without an exaggerated personality. This reassures him as he considers that Muling is like a mix of boyfriend and mother for Belzebu, which seems appropriate to him. He fears that if the protagonist had a stronger personality, it could become a problem, but luckily that's not the case. The situation gets complicated when Starro receives the order to return to his own office since he has his own assistant, and frankly, it's a distraction, but the fallen angel refuses. Just at that moment, his assistant Sargatanas walks in with a gun in hand, shooting to remind Starrod that he has to go back. Sargatanas is sadistic by nature and tends to annoy Starrod a lot, which explains why he prefers to take refuge in Belzebu's office. The relationship between the two is a bit strange and it's not clear who the real boss is. When Astaroth asks why he didn't take him out in a more peaceful manner, Sargatanas admits that he prefers more violent methods. Even the toughest characters have secrets. Sargatanas loves fluffy things. She threatens Astaroth with punishment. She shows vulnerability when Astaroth compliments her, hinting at more behind her tough facade. However, she threatens Astaroth and anyone who discovers this secret with lethal punishment if they say a single word. After dragging Astaroth out of the office, Sargatanas seems to show a slight moment of vulnerability when Astaroth, in his clumsiness, gives her a compliment, telling her that he likes her, although his words are ambiguous and could refer to how she annoys him. Sargatanas turns bright red, but quickly shakes off the comment and returns to her usual attitude, implying that behind her tough facade, there might be something more. It's another day at the office, and Belzebu is facing one of the toughest decisions of her life, whether to hug an alpaca or a rabbit first. Doubt consumes her, while her love for soft things remains one of the most adorable traits of her personality. Muling tells her that it's not important right now, mainly because it's a hypothetical question, and instead of wondering about things, she should focus on working. However, the assistant finds it endearing that they think those things, while the rest of the assistants watch her and admit that despite everything, the guy is doing a good job dealing with Belzebu's whims. Later, the queen meets with the Hell Council, who come to discuss issues of utmost importance. Muling watches from a distance, but soon gets distracted when he notices an impressive woman during a meeting, Yorinomi, a beautiful and very capable lady, although her look of disgust leaves him quite confused. Later, when Muling encounters her again, he receives that disdainful look once more. However, to his surprise, her expression changes completely, going from obvious rejection to an angelic smile. And so, the shy demon runs away with a smile on her face, leaving our protagonist wondering what just happened. Noticing that Orinomi dropped her handkerchief, Muling, always attentive, picks it up and decides to return it to her. She leads him to a park, where she asks him to lower his voice and to Muling's surprise, reveals her true purpose as she is spying on the young boys who are on a field trip. Yorinomi is actually a shotakon, a person obsessed with children, and in particular, she seems to have a fascination with the little ones. Although she clarifies that she would never do anything to harm them, her behavior is strange enough to make anyone doubt. During her explanation, Yorinomi swings between a state of ecstasy and emotional exhaustion. Her expressions range from angelic to devilish, depending on whether she's dealing with the reality of grown men or fantasizing about children. This explains her change in personality earlier, as when she sees an adult person, she looks at them as they are, and that reflects in her face of disgust, but soon she starts imagining them as children, and her demeanor changes right at that moment. In that super awkward moment, Astaroth shows up as always trying to flirt with her, only to get a total rejection. Yorinomi tries to imagine Astaroth as a child to be able to tolerate him, which works because that's kind of her thing, but just then, Saraga Athanas interrupts the scene and gives Astaroth a good beating. This act of violence awakens another strange fantasy in Orinomi, who begins to enjoy visualizing an older woman bothering a child. Yorinomi returns to calmness. Muling invites Belzebu to a movie. He worries it might be a date. Meanwhile, Muling has a couple of tickets to the cinema and decides to invite Beelzebub. She excitedly accepts, but as the situation progresses, Muling starts to doubt whether what he has done is appropriate, and the thought that it could be a date begins to worry him. That night, Belzebu, unable to sleep due to excitement, stays awake thinking about what it would mean to go to the movies with Muling. However, the plans change when the next day Muling doesn't show up for work. Belzebu finds out that he has fallen ill, which could be because he was also too excited and ran all over the city the night before. Worried, Belzebu decides to visit him at his house accompanied by Azazel, and upon arriving, she wants to help by taking care of Muling, but her lack of cooking and domestic skills becomes evident. Fortunately, Azazel takes control of the situation and handles preparing the food. Belzebu, in an attempt to be helpful, tries to wipe the sweat off Muling, but he resists, creating an awkward scene that almost seems like something out of a romantic misunderstanding. To avoid wasting the movie tickets, Muling decides to give them to Seiso so he can go with Belzebu, but despite his generosity, Belzebu doesn't seem very happy about the idea. Once Belzebu and Azazel leave, Belzebu returns shortly after to Muling's house, confessing that she wants to stay a little longer with him as the atmosphere feels somewhat lonely without her presence. Muling accepts, relieved that he doesn't have to spend the day alone. Meanwhile, Azazel discovers with horror that the movie they were going to see is a horror film, and it's a zombie movie, which won't be a pleasant experience for someone as sensitive as Azazel. Belzebu, for her part, stays watching Myolin while he sleeps. In a moment of tenderness, she can't help but lean in and rest her forehead against his. Although it's not a kiss, the closeness leaves her very embarrassed, and when she returns home, she keeps thinking about what she did and feels completely ashamed for getting so close to him. She realizes that before she could easily touch Muling, but now her heart races faster every time he gets close. The next day, Muling recovers from his cold, but Belzebu doesn't show up for work. In the end, it seems that she is the one who has fallen ill, although her discomfort isn't related to catching Muling's illness. Everything indicates that what has her in bed is a classic case of lovesickness, which seems to be raising her emotional temperature. In the Library of Pandemonium, a young demon is reading his books, unaware that he is being watched by the worrying Yorinomi, who is obsessed with the boy's youthful features. Azazel takes Muling to meet the head librarian of Pandemonium, Dantaleon. Despite his youthful appearance, Dantaleon is a guy who seems more interested in sleeping than in fulfilling his responsibilities. If he's not asleep, he's most likely reading, since he's an avid reader who prefers books over anything else, even over eating. That's also the cause of his drowsiness, as he spends the whole night reading and sleeps at work. But it seems like he's doing something right, as everyone seems used to things being this way. Dandelion loves reading so much that sometimes he forgets the basics, like taking a break to eat. On the other hand, there's Molek, a tall and loud guy whose main usefulness seems to be serving as a human ladder for Dantaleon to reach the books that are out of his reach. The librarian asks them what they're doing in that place, and C replies that he's there to return some books. Dantaleon proves to be quite intelligent. as he can accurately guess what kind of books Muling is interested in. But be careful not to make too much noise, because Dantaleon won't hesitate to spoil the ending of a mystery novel if you disturb him while he's focused. For his part, Molek remains a loud character who keeps wandering around the library, as he is a high-ranking demon, which means he has many assistants doing his work, leaving him with plenty of free time. Muling decides to explore the library a bit, surprised by all the things in the place. Meanwhile, Yuri does not appear to me again facing Muling. She is upset because he is getting along with Dantaleon, a young man she watches. She warns Muling not to tell Dantaleon, but her behavior suggests she can't keep this secret. Muling discovers Dantaleon might be older than he appears, having read the library books. Yuri remains lost in her fantasies. Meanwhile, Belphegor struggles with shyness when interacting with Azazel. Muling also discovers that Dantaleon could be much older than he looks, as he has read all the books in the library, which would have taken anyone else centuries. But Yuri remains lost in her fantasies, oblivious to those thousand details. On the other hand, Belphegor continues to struggle with his extreme shyness when it comes to interacting with Azazel. Her assistant suggests that she try a different strategy, like baking some kind of dessert. Belphegor decides to give it a try, but quickly realizes that she needs help, so she asks Belzebu for support. However, when Belzebu agrees to help the pink-haired demon, he soon realizes that he's not very skilled in the kitchen either. So he thinks about calling Sacel, but they quickly realize how ridiculous that would be. Luckily, Belzebu turns to his professional chef, Nisroch, who, upon learning that they are going to cook their own food, has a panic attack because he believes they are actually disrespecting his cooking. But the queen explains to him that this isn't the case. Nisroch has the ability to cook at an extremely fast pace, although he always ends up with his clothes disheveled because of his speed. The chef tries to teach Belphegor, but between the fact that the young woman has panic attacks when a man talks to her, Nisroch ending up half naked after every meal, and his incredible speed, the demoness can't learn anything. In the end, the girls decide that the best thing is to learn on their own. As they progress in the kitchen, mistakes and successes are inevitable since neither of them has experience, so they end up wasting a bar of chocolate. So, the two girls go to buy more chocolate, and Belphegor thanks her friend for all the help she's given her, to which Belzebu replies that she loves her a lot and that they are friends. Finally, they make some brownies, but Belphegor doubts if she can give them to Sacel, fearing rejection or hatred. This leads to frequent bathroom trips, a constant in her life. Belphegor panics and reconsiders giving the brownies, but Belzebu encourages her to be brave and talk to him. She reassures Belphegor that if Azazel hurts her, she'll send him to hell, which scares Belphegor, as it doesn't seem like a joke. After gathering courage, Belphegor gives the brownies to Sel. She also reassures her by saying that if Azazel ever hurts her, she will send him to the darkest corner of hell, which scares Belphegor a bit, since even though Belzebu says it's a joke, it doesn't really seem like one. After gathering all her courage, Belphegor finally hands the brownies over to Sel. Her reaction is pure happiness, and her smile is so unexpected that Belphegor faints from the excitement. It looks like she will need another urgent trip to the bathroom after this event. Belzebu, excited by the situation, also gives her brownies to Muling. Fortunately, Muling loves them, and as a token of gratitude, he gives her a book he borrowed about the softest things in the world, something that clearly excites Belzebu. The day ends on a cheerful note for everyone. Belphegor faces his fears, Azazel shows a kinder side, and Muling and Belzebu share a sweet moment thanks to their respective creations. During the workday, Belzebu always struggles to stay focused. Despite being the queen of pandemonium and having numerous responsibilities, her mind often drifts to much softer and sweeter things than the reports and meetings she has to attend. In one of those moments, Muling, her loyal assistant, notices that Belzebu is particularly distracted. Worried that she won't finish her work on time, he tries to motivate her in a somewhat peculiar way. He suggests that this way she can finish her tasks. Soon they'll be able to go eat chestnuts together, knowing that Belzebu loves the little pleasures in life, like roasted chestnuts. Upon hearing this, the young demon can't help but get excited. Her face lights up and she immediately gets to work at full speed. Muling can't help but admire her for her sudden ability to focus on work. From his perspective, the queen seems incredibly dedicated and efficient. However, the reality is quite different. Inside, Belzebu isn't thinking about reports or pending tasks, but rather the delicious promise of chestnuts. This little reward motivates her more than anything else, and that's why she works hard to finish everything quickly. Later, as Belzebu heads to an important meeting, another typical mishap of her natural clumsiness arises. Her heel gets stuck in a crack in the floor, a little accident that leaves her frozen in the middle of the hallway. Muling, as always, quickly rushes to her side to help her. She tries to free her heel from the crack, but between the struggle to get it out and the embarrassment they both feel about the situation, things don't go as they hoped. Finally, the heel breaks, and in the process, Belzebub accidentally kicks Muling high. Despite the embarrassment they both feel, Muling knows he can't leave Belzebub in that situation. He has no choice but to take her back, but he faces a dilemma. Should he carry her like a princess or give her a piggyback ride? Both options are embarrassing for the two of them, and neither seems very comfortable with the idea. In the end, Muling chooses to carry her back with a lot of effort, trying not to make the situation any more awkward than it already is. They both return to the office, and Muling asks her how she can walk in such high and thin heels, to which she replies that it's her choice since she likes walking in heels. In the midst of this chaotic situation, Adramelech appears, who is in charge of Belzebub's clothing. Seeing that her queen broke her heel, he immediately gets to work on some new ones for her. So the queen has to spend the day without heels, which makes her shorter, something that quickly becomes a nuisance. Muling, always concerned about Belzebub's safety, suggests that maybe she should opt for lower heels to avoid future problems. However, Belzebub firmly refuses and explains that she wears high heels not just for their appearance, but because she wants to be a little closer to Muling so she can talk to him more easily. At another moment, Belzebub recalls an anecdote from the past when she was struck by a lightning bolt sent by God. This event didn't bring her fear, but rather an experience she describes as paradise. According to her, when the lightning hit her, she found herself in a place filled with her beloved fluffy gossamers, which for her was a kind of paradise on earth. This event did not bring him fear, but rather an experience he describes as paradise. According to her, when the lightning struck her, she found herself in a place filled with her beloved fluffy gossamers, which for her was a kind of paradise on earth. This memory, far from being traumatic, is one of her happiest moments. Later on, Belzebub has to attend a photo shoot for an important magazine. During the interview they conduct to accompany the photos, the queen tries to maintain her composure and appear as professional as possible. However, several times it seems like she's about to let her lazier side slip out. Fortunately, her response manages to maintain a majestic image worthy of her position as the leader of Pandemonium. When asked what things she dislikes, she replies that there's nothing that really bothers her, which makes her seem even more perfect in the eyes of the public. On a particularly tormenting day, Belzebub is not just in her office. Muling, worried about her whereabouts, receives a suggestion from Azazel to go look for her. After a while of searching for her, Muling finds her curled up in a corner, completely soaked from the rain. At first, Muling thinks the reason for her behavior is simply the bad weather. However, she soon discovers the real reason. Belzebub is afraid of lightning. Even though she tries to deny her fear, every time a lightning bolt lights up the sky, she curls up closer to Muling, seeking comfort. Belzebub fears that Muling will see her as pathetic and weak, but he doesn't think that at all. Instead, he comforts her, and they both agree that this little secret will stay between them. Later, Muling discovers that Azazel already knew about Beelzebub's fear of lightning, as they have known each other for a long time. This discovery leaves Muling somewhat disappointed, as he thought he was the only one who knew this vulnerable side of his queen. Despite this, the relationship between Muling and Belzebub continues to grow, and they both maintain a special connection. When the article about Belzebub finally comes out in the magazine, she feels very happy with the result. Even though she's still busy in her office fulfilling her responsibilities, her mind is daydreaming, as is usual for her. In her imagination, Belzebub transports herself to a prehistoric setting where she gathers chestnuts and shells alongside Muling. While she seems to be working intently, in reality, her mind keeps wandering through soft and lovely fantasies, which adds another dose of sweetness to her already charming character. The chief medical officer of Pandemonium, Buer, notices that the inhabitants of the kingdom are not staying in shape and suggests that one of the reasons is the lack of physical activity. With his usual sense of responsibility, Bueller proposes to set up a gym in the building so everyone can work out. The idea sounds logical, but when the project finally gets underway, something unexpected happens. Instead of a gym, what appears is a public bathroom. This unexpected turn comes courtesy of Astaroth, Pandemonium's finance minister. Using his position of power, Astaroth decides that instead of making everyone sweat more in a gym, it would be much more pleasant to set up a public bath where they could relax. Even though the original project isn't that, everyone decides to take advantage of the opportunity and enjoy the already installed bathroom. The guys are the first to jump into the bathroom. Astaroth, true to his provocative style and always looking for some entertainment, starts to fantasize about what the girls might be talking about on their side of the bathroom. In her mind, she imagines that they would probably be arguing about topics like her plot, which gets her quite excited. However, to her disappointment, all she sees around her are other men showing off their muscles and abs, something that doesn't interest her at all. The situation becomes awkward for him, and his mind starts to panic as he realizes he won't get what he was hoping for. Astaroth then makes a questionable decision as he heads off to spy on the girl's side. Even though Muling is always sensible, he tries to stop him and make him see that what he's about to do isn't right. Astaroth is completely determined to sneak a peek while the girls are changing. Without expecting those consequences, he opens the door to the women's bathroom, hoping to find a scene that fulfills his fantasies. However, what he finds is completely different. Sargatanas awaits Astaroth, anticipating his move. The girls wait to catch him spying. He knew exactly what Astaroth was trying to do, and had planned to anticipate his move. The girls hadn't even entered the bathroom yet, as they were all waiting for Astaroth to try to spy on them so they could catch him in the act. Beelzebub suspects Muling in Astaroth's plan. Though Muling did nothing, the queen sees both as pigs. The guys reflect, and the girls enjoy a bath, free from spies. Even though Muling hadn't done anything, the queen starts to think that both of them are pigs. While the guys reflect on what happened, the girls can finally enjoy their bath in peace without the interruption of the spies. Later, Beelzebub discovers a sweet fact about Muling that changes his opinion about him. It turns out that in his youth, Muling had a pet, an adorable little dog named Mitarashi. The idea of a young and sweet Muling taking care of a little dog completely melts Beelzebub's heart. Not only that, but he also finds out that Muling has two younger twin sisters, which adds a family touch to his image. Upon learning this, Beelzebub starts to fantasize about calling him Ni-chan, as if he were his older brother. However, as he reflects on how little he knows about Muling, this revelation leaves her somewhat sad. Beelzebub would like to know more about his assistant's life, but he doesn't know how to do it without coming off as too pushy. In the midst of his emotional confusion, Astaroth, always sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, decides to help Beelzebub practice his conversation skills. To do so, he fakes a conversation with Muli, which quickly turns into a disaster. Although he starts with normal questions, Astaroth eventually crosses the line when, in the middle of the conversation, he asks something completely inappropriate, wanting to know what color her underwear is. This audacity prompts an immediate intervention from Sargatanas, who doesn't hesitate to punish Astaroth for his lack of respect. Astaroth's question unleashes chaos, and it doesn't take long for him to receive his well-deserved punishment for trying to steer the conversation down such an inappropriate path. After this awkward episode, Beelzebub, still intrigued by Mulin, decides it's time to ask him questions to get to know him better. However, as she thinks about it, she realizes that if she asks him everything she wants to know, she might come off as annoying. Even though she tries to stay composed, the first thing that comes out of her mouth is, surprisingly, the same question that caused trouble with Astaroth: what color his shorts are. Muling, completely surprised and embarrassed, doesn't know how to react, but finally responds in a bad way and without any other choice. Sara Gatanas has always been known for her strict character and serious approach to everything she does, especially in her role within Pandemonium. She often gives the impression of being relentless and without weaknesses, but in reality, like many in this curious realm, she has a hidden side that easily reveals a huge weakness for cute and adorable things. As we saw before, this part of her personality is carefully hidden behind her serious mask, and only those who know her very well suspect something. One day, his subordinates mentioned the opening of a new themed cafe in the city. This cafe specializes in everything related to cuteness. The decor is fluffy and pastel, the desserts are also shaped like little animals, and the atmosphere is designed to make lovers of all things adorable smile. The subordinates, seeing Sargatanas' strict attitude, assumed that a place like that wouldn't interest her in the slightest and don't pay it much attention. However, what they don't know is that deep inside, Sargatanas is dying to visit the place. The simple idea of enjoying such a tender experience excites her deeply, but of course she cannot show this enthusiasm openly. So as not to give herself away or anyone suspects her love for beautiful things, Sargatanas decides to dress up before going to the cafe. What she doesn't realize is that her attempt to go unnoticed only makes her stand out even more. She dresses in a strange and suspicious way, covering herself more than necessary and trying to hide her identity, which ends up attracting more attention than she intended to avoid. Once at the cafe, she can finally relax and enjoy all the adorable atmosphere that she loves so much. Sargatanas delights in the little details, the bunny-shaped cakes, the cups decorated with cat ears, and the soft atmosphere that seems tailor-made for her. However, her tranquility doesn't last long, as just when she thought she could enjoy her time, Azazel, the intimidating-looking demon who shares her love for cute things, finds her in the cafe. Despite the initial awkwardness, they both end up sharing a table, and as the minutes go by, Sargatanas worries about how others might perceive her. But Azazel, with his usual wisdom in dealing with emotional topics, offers her a different perspective. He has chosen to dress elegantly, but not to hide, rather to help improve the reputation of the place. He explains that the cafe staff works hard to make their customers happy, and he feels he should contribute to that effort. Saragatanas, who at first felt uncomfortable with the situation, starts to feel grateful for having come to the cafe that day. Azazel shows her that there's nothing wrong with the things she doesn't like yet, no matter how others might see it. This little revelation allows Sargatanas to relax a bit more and enjoy her time at the cafe without worrying so much about her image. While they enjoy the adorable desserts, Belzebu and Muling make their entrance into the cafe. As expected, Belzebu is completely fascinated by the cuteness of the place. The Demon Queen can't resist the temptation to buy all the available products, taking home plush toys, mugs, and everything she can find. Later, Belzebu tells Belphegor about her upcoming plans, a trip to the beach. Of course, both Miolin and Azazel are invited, and upon hearing this, Belphegor goes into total embarrassment mode, worried about how she will look in front of Azazel at the beach. Even though her social anxiety is always a hurdle, this time she decides that she wants to look cute in front of Swazel, which leads her to face her nervousness with courage. The first step in her plan is to find the right swimsuit, and for that, Adara Melik and her seductive assistant Morrigan offer to help her. The search for the perfect swimsuit is no easy task for Belphegor. Most of the outfits suggested by Morrigan seem excessive to her, as they show too much skin. Belphegor, always nervous and worried about how others see her, doesn't feel comfortable with the idea of exposing herself so much. Interestingly, her abdomen is always exposed, but that doesn't give her the confidence she needs. After several tries, she finally settles on a swimsuit that she thinks is cute, even though it's more revealing than she'd like. Belzebu, on the other hand, opts for an extremely daring swimsuit, made almost exclusively of strings. Adramelech, with his good judgment, refuses to recommend it. In his classic fashion choice, Adramelech reminds Belzebu that fashion is not just about how one looks on the outside, but also about how it can affect the confidence and mood of the person wearing it. Belzebu, always eager to know what Muling thinks, immediately calls him to get his opinion on the swimsuit. When Muling sees it, he immediately covers his eyes, completely embarrassed. This leads Belzebu to think that maybe the daring string swimsuit would be a better option, while Adramelech insists that Muling needs to take a good look at the swimsuit to give a fair opinion. The situation becomes increasingly awkward and starts to feel more like a romantic scene, with Muling getting redder and redder from embarrassment. Finally, the long-awaited beach day arrives, but the fun quickly gets ruined by a sudden storm. It seems that the anticipation of seeing the swimsuits ahead of time spoiled the whole trip back. At the cafe, Belzebu faces a new difficulty, as the food is so adorable that she can't even bring herself to eat it. Each dish is decorated with so much care and tenderness that it's impossible for her to ruin it with a bite. Meanwhile, Mulin, seeing Belzebu's reaction to the adorable desserts, feels completely overwhelmed by how adorable she herself looks. For a while, Muling was absent in Pandemonium due to certain commitments, and when he returned, he quickly assumed that Belzebu hadn't done anything at all during his absence. I thought the Demon Queen had completely stopped working, which wouldn't be surprising given her tendency to get easily distracted. However, Belzebu felt deeply offended by Muling's accusation. Even though she usually appears carefree, this time her emotions surfaced immediately. Belzebu complains, saying that she had only been distracted because he wasn't there. Although he said it in a joking tone, there was a hint of truth in his words. Muling, in an attempt to provoke a reaction, suggests that he could request a transfer to the library since Dantaleon, a demon who works there, had asked for his help. Belzebu, caught off guard by that comment, goes into shock at the possibility of Muling leaving to work somewhere else. The very thought of not having him close affected her more than she was willing to admit. However, she soon realizes that Muling wasn't serious and confronts him with a challenging look. To Muling's surprise, Belzebu had already finished all her work during his absence and had just been joking. Now it all seemed like the misunderstanding was Muling's fault, who had rushed to judge her without any basis. Belzebu, feeling a bit insecure about the exchange, decides to seek comfort from her friend. Belphegor confesses that she feels confused and worried, wondering if Muling hated her for what happened earlier. The memory of when she pressed her forehead against Muling's keeps lingering in her mind, making her question if she went too far. Meanwhile, Muling is also feeling uneasy about what happened. Looking for a way to make things right with Belzebu, he decides to ask Starut and Dramelech for advice. Both demons, known for their extravagant personalities, for various suggestions on how to apologize. Finally, they come to the conclusion that a gift might be the best way to make amends and suggest that some flowers would be a suitable option. Muling, armed with his newly acquired apology idea, returns to talk to Belzebu. However, when he finds her, she continues to act as if she doesn't care at all about this misunderstanding. Belzebu pretends to be okay with the idea of Muling transferring to another place, even though she is actually deeply affected by the possibility of him moving away from her side. Muling, seeing the pain behind her facade, assures her that he would never request a transfer, and that even if they no longer work together, they could always continue to see each other. This comment seems to ease some of the tension in Beelzebub, although the situation between them remains awkward, like a little fight between lovers who don't want to admit their true feelings. While all this is happening, Belphegor has a strange dream. In it, she confesses her feelings to Sazel, which makes her wake up feeling confused and nervous. She wonders if that could be considered a person, and the level of embarrassment she feels just thinking about it. Later, while she's in the library, she reflects on the books that Cell likes, believing that if she shared his passion for reading, maybe she could get closer to him. Her thoughts start to wander, leading her to imagine herself in the story of the princess who kisses the frog. In her mind, she wonders if Azazel should be a frog all the time so they could always be together. Lost in her fantasies, Belphegor doesn't realize that Azazel is nearby. When she finally notices him, she panics and, in her clumsiness, trips. Azazel, always attentive, catches her before she falls, which only makes Belphegor feel more embarrassed. In the midst of the chaos, Belphegor accidentally lets slip a word that heightens her discomfort, as she thought she had confessed that she liked Azazel by using the word Suki, which means I like you, but Azazel unconsciously interprets it as Chuki, which means memo. Embarrassed to the extreme, Belphegor quickly runs away, probably heading to a bathroom. Meanwhile, the other demons in Pandemonium are on the verge of collapse due to the overwhelming workload. Astaroth, always looking for opportunities to create chaos, tries to sneak a peek at Sargatanas' sleeping face, but as usual, he fails in his attempt. Azazel, for his part, sees Belphegor sleeping peacefully, and knowing she would get scared if he wakes her up, decides to cover her with his jacket to make her more comfortable. It's a sweet gesture that shows his caring and protective nature, even though Belphegor isn't aware of it. On the other hand, Molek, as noisy as ever, ruins the moment for Eurynome, who was enjoying the sight of Dantaleon sleeping peacefully. Meanwhile, Muling watches Beelzebub as she sleeps, noticing how peaceful she looks. Despite the recent tension between them, he can't help but feel nervous being so close to her. He lets his thoughts wander as he looks at her, but just when he's about to get a little closer, one of the attendants walks into the room bringing refreshments, which startles him and makes him quickly back away. Determined to avoid further awkwardness, Muling heads to another room to eat in peace. Muling is unaware. Beelzebub was half awake. She regrets not seeing Muling's intentions. Though they hide feelings, it's clear there's more, but neither admits it. Inside, he regrets not having opened his eyes to see what Muling was planning to do, perhaps looking for some kind gesture. Even though they both try to hide their emotions, it's clear that there's something more between them, even if neither of them is ready to fully admit it. Days later, Astaroth is absent from work as usual, and Saragatanas, true to her role, has to go look for him to bring him back. Unfortunately for the girl Astaroth was with, her date gets interrupted when Sargatanas finds him and drags him back to work, leaving the poor girl traumatized as she watches Astaroth get punished. Despite being reprimanded, Astaroth complains that he still needs a break, so Sargatanas grants him a brief respite, allowing him to grab a coffee on a nearby bench. While resting, Sargatanas finds herself surrounded by couples everywhere, which irritates her a little. Sargatanas is conflicted. Her words and heart disagree. She rationalizes, thinking she's just supervising Astaroth, a loser. Sargatanas' internal conflict is clear, as her mouth says one thing, but her heart seems to say the opposite. In the end, she rationalizes the situation, thinking that she's just looking out for Astaroth because he's a loser who needs supervision. When it's time to go back to work, Astaroth thanks her for always putting up with him and tells her that he loves her, something Sargatanas has heard before and considers his typical pickup line. Astaroth leans on her shoulder, but noticing that she doesn't react, he assumes she's calm until he sees the annoyed expression on her face. He quickly realizes that it's time to return to work and back at home. Sargatanas can't stop thinking about how embarrassing that moment was and reflects on what he really feels. Are her true feelings starting to come to the surface? The next day, even Loth, having not learned his lesson, disappears from work again, forcing Sargatanas to go look for him once more. This time, however, a slight smile can be seen on her face. It seems that after all, Sargatanas enjoys her job and maybe, just maybe, the company of Astaroth. Meanwhile, in Pandemonium, the temperatures are unusually cold, something completely unexpected in a place that is usually scorching. Beelzebub, used to the hellish heat, can barely function because of the cold. Fortunately, with Mulan by her side, she can endure it. However, not even the heat patches that Muling offers her are enough to keep her warm, and every time Beelzebub sneezes, it causes her plot to bounce, which clearly doesn't go unnoticed. Muling, completely uncomfortable with the situation, suggests that she cover up a bit more, but even that doesn't solve the problem, as all her attributes are just too big. Mercy Boo isn't happy about the idea of covering up either, as it prevents her from feeling the softness of Merz's eye against her chest. As they head to the meeting room, they run into Oleg, who has turned into a snowman, and Dantaleon, who is completely frozen. After spending too much time reading outside even in the cold, Muling decides to take the initiative and puts her scarf on Belzebub, which makes her feel much better. Suddenly, the cold doesn't seem so bad anymore. During the meeting, however, Belzebub has trouble concentrating as she's completely absorbed in the scent of Muling's scarf, trying to sniff it without getting caught. The next day, the weather returns to normal, but curiously, Belzebub still feels cold. Maybe she's looking for something more, or who knows, maybe she just wants Muling to hug her again. That night, Belphegor is dreaming that he's dating Azazel, but it seems too good to be true, and indeed it was just a dream. Maybe she's looking for something more, or who knows, maybe she just wants Muling to hug her again. At night, Belphegor is dreaming that he's dating Azazel, but it seems too good to be true, and indeed, it was just a dream. Back to reality, Belphegor is still dealing with his emotions, although it seems he doesn't need another sermon from Cameo about facing what he feels after a meeting with Belzebub. Just as he's about to leave, Azazel walks in through the door. Immediately, Belphegor panics and quickly runs away. That uncomfortable feeling of needing to go to the bathroom comes back once again, and meanwhile, Azazel, worried, thinks that he has scared her off again. For her next tea party, Azazel decides to be considerate and choose not to attend so as not to make Belphegor uncomfortable. In the meeting, Muling discovers some interesting details. Adramelech has some pretty handsome new male assistants, while Morrigan is the manager of a popular succubus idol group called SCB. During the chat, Mjolnir asks Dramelech if he could make less scary clothes for Zazel, but Adramelech isn't interested. Morrigan, for her part, offers to help, but what she suggests are seduction lessons for Muling, which doesn't seem like the most appropriate solution. The chaos begins when Adramelech realizes that someone has drunk his wine, and the culprit turns out to be Belphegor, who mistook it for grape juice. Realizing her mistake, she quickly runs to the bathroom because of her incontinence issues. However, the wine starts to take effect, and soon Belphegor feels dizzy and drowsy. When Azazel finds her, Belphegor thinks she's dreaming again, and instead of running away, she asks him to stay with her until she wakes up. Belphegor, drunk, lets herself be carried away by the feeling of being in paradise, completely relaxed. Ironically, what seems like a perfect dream is actually real life. Well, real life in anime, Azazel, completely bewildered, doesn't understand why Belphegor doesn't seem to be afraid of him. He tries to ask her, but before he can get an answer, Belphegor falls into a deep sleep. Despite everything, Azazel hopes that in the future they can become better friends, and for now, he takes her back to the tea party, where everyone is shocked to see the state Belphegor is in. The next day, when Belphegor runs into Azazel again, she doesn't remember much of what happened the night before, but the others have already filled her in on everything that went down. She is extremely embarrassed, and even though she feels the need to clear things up, her nerves get the best of her. Azazel assumes Belphegor fears him and keeps his distance. This cold attitude makes Belphegor think Azazel is avoiding her. She feels her chance to get closer is gone, seeks comfort from Belzebub, and hopes for better luck. However, this cold attitude only causes Belphegor to misunderstand the situation, believing that Azazel is purposely avoiding him. With that confusion, Belphegor feels that his chance to get close to him has vanished, crying inconsolably, seeking comfort on Beelzebub's shoulder. It seems that although there was one step forward, 2 steps back were quick to follow, and maybe next time she will have better luck. Finally, as Belzebub heads to the bathroom, she realizes she was about to have an embarrassing accident since her sweater almost left her backside exposed. A mischievous gossamer had been pulling on a thread of her sweater, which almost caused a wardrobe malfunction. However, that's not the real reason for her bad mood. Muling, worried, thinks he must have done something wrong since he was the one who gave her the sweater. Belle gets nervous and goes to Dramelech to fix her garment, and he literally uses magic to weave it back together. The next day, when Muling tries to find out if he did something to upset Belzebub, he finds her completely smiling and happy, which leaves him thinking that maybe he's being too self-conscious. With the arrival of spring, strange stories start to emerge from other departments about how they celebrate Hanami, which is the cherry blossom viewing. For example, Morrigan uses chicken legs like their maracas, and she's not even drunk. To everyone's surprise, Belzebub reveals that she has never attended a Hanami. In light of this, Muling decided to organize one and invite everyone, that is, all his friends. The plan is for everyone to bring their own food for a potluck. However, 90% of the people bring KFC just because Belzebub mentioned that she had never tried it. So what was supposed to be a hanami turns into a fried chicken party. In light of this situation, they decide to call Nisrog to prepare something more varied and not just eat chicken. Meanwhile, Mjolnir hands Belphegor some cookies made by Azazel. Just by holding them, Belphegor faints from happiness, and it seems she still has a long way to go in controlling her emotions. Well, at least she didn't go to the bathroom, right? During the celebration, Belzebu gets distracted chasing a sakura petal floating in the air, not seeing what's in front of her, and ends up crashing right into a tree. It can be sweet or completely ridiculous, but Muling joins her in the House of Petals, and as he does, he reflects on how fleeting life is, how everything can disappear in an instant. But suddenly he realizes that Belzebu has disappeared and starts to panic. Fortunately, she was just hiding behind a tree, which greatly relieves him. However, the moment turns out to be somewhat embarrassing for Belzebu, and they both end up chasing each other around a tree in a childish game. The scene is as absurd as it is adorable. Belzebu, frustrated by not being able to catch a petal, finally receives one from Muling, who kindly hands over his. This fills her with a warm feeling, and even though she doesn't fully express it, something begins to awaken in her heart. However, it's time to pack things up and get back to work. A few days later, Belzebu and Muling repeat their little scene of chasing petals around a tree, creating another sweet and unexpected moment. Meanwhile, their assistants watch in silence, enjoying the chance to drink and see this adorable spectacle without having to intervene, since Muling will probably never confess his feelings, but Belzebu will someday take that first step.